So Aldon Smith is now back in the NFL. What a weird timeline we are living in. He signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Cowboys because, of course, it's going to be the Cowboys that are going to go out and sign him. Just a crazy situation. But I mean, listen, this is a guy who at his best had 19 and a half sacks in 2012. I mean, he was an elite player, and it was off the field issues that really got him out of the league. It wasn't him not being able to perform. It was more so just he couldn't keep his head screwed on straight. The last time he played a game was in 2015, which is, 5 seasons ago. So it's going to be quite the layoff. It's almost, half of the layoff John Gruden had, and he was a coach. So I imagine it's going to be more difficult for Smith. But at the same time, I mean, it's worth mentioning, Smith at his best was just dominant. He was great. And could some of that greatness still carry over and still come into effect? I mean, age-wise, he's only 30, Him being 30, that's one thing. The question is less so about the age, but more so about the mileage. I mean, being out of football for so long, it's hard to stay in football shape. Even if you're in good shape, it's hard to stay in NFL shape where you're just spending all day, every day, trying to make sure that your body is as perfect as possible to go out and play some football. So that's one thing. But you know what? Let's start there. Let's start with this film study and let's talk about what Aldon Smith was able to do so effective right when he got into the NFL. This is his 19 and a half sack season. He's going up against Chicago. He really had just a monster day against them. I mean, this was just one of those, he's in the backfield every play type games where he has a one-on-one matchup against a left tackle. Chicago did this a bit earlier in the game. They did not do this much later in the game, but what's going to happen is that, so it's a one-on-one matchup. And notice how Smith, he's not doing anything fancy here. He never was necessarily the I'm going to fool you or trick you guy. He was always much more of a I'm stronger than you and I'm going to push you backwards. I'm going to just use my strength to get around you or get through you. That's what I'm going to do. And so as you see, I mean, this isn't necessarily the most difficult position to get. I mean, the left tackle, he has both his hands around Smith. And so he's kind of just saying, okay, fine, you try to push me back. I'm just going to see if I can just hold on for long enough that my quarterback can make a throw. You're not going to be able to get around me at this point. So all you can do is try to go through me. However, Smith is strong enough that that's going to be exactly what he's able to do, and he gets the sack. That's what he was best at, is his strength. That's what his number one positive attribute was, is he was just a strong guy. He could just manhandle tackles. So I think for Dallas, that's maybe one of their concerns at this point, is, if you're so strong, well, how good are you going to be when you're maybe not as strong? When you're 30, maybe you haven't been able to keep up your strength as much. Maybe you are a little bit weaker, and maybe you're still a really talented guy, but it might not be what it once was, and what else can you really do at that point? And I don't want to make it out like he never would make any moves, but even when he would make a move, it tends to be a move to try to utilize his strength more so than his footwork. Like on this play, again, it's a one-on-one matchup, and right after the ball is snapped, what you notice is that it kind of appears as though Smith is going to try to run to the outside a little bit, trying to basically push that left tackle's left shoulder, see if you can just push him back a little bit, run around, and get to the quarterback. It's your most basic pass rush idea. But Smith is going to make sure that he's making a little move here. He steps one step a little bit outside, but then goes to the inside. He's going to just push and try to see if he can get him back, surprise him a little bit, and again, use that strength to your advantage. Because if you're weaker here as a pass rusher, if you're weaker, you're not going to be able to pull this move off because the tackle has decent hand placement. The downside is that he just wasn't expecting it, so he's going to be a little bit flat-footed. The idea basically for Smith is, can he just push that tackle just far enough away from the guard to where there will be a gap where Smith can run through and get to the quarterback? And he is absolutely able to do that. He gets a sack and even knocks the ball out, although the quarterback does fall on it, so it was not a fumble. But still, I mean, those are the things that Smith would do. So he would sometimes just straight up try to overpower you. Sometimes he'll use a move, but even when he would use a move, it tends to be a way to use the power to his advantage. I do think that he's someone who can move to some degree, but again, it's the power. Like on a play like this is going to be it's going to be a twist. So, oftentimes twist, you use speed to try to get away with it, but usually the speed's actually coming from the interior lineman. You want someone who's fast from that position. You want someone who's strong from an edge rusher, and it didn't get much stronger than Smith. So, anyways, the way this play is just going to work right off the bat for the offensive line is they're set up to block like that, where the guard and the center will double team an interior lineman, and there's a one-on-one matchup for Smith. And so then what Smith does is he's going to run to the inside. He wants to basically just run straight into that guard, who will be a little bit surprised. And also, in an ideal world, the tackle will just completely follow him, which would allow the interior lineman to run around like that. And I'm talking about the interior lineman, not the linebacker. Graphic is a little bit tough because, interior lineman is right behind the linebacker. But yeah, interior lineman runs around. And then the tackle will either do one of two things. He'll get distracted by the interior lineman, or he'll run in for Smith, which could allow a good situation for somebody else, because Smith is going to surprise the guard. But look at how much he pushes the guard back when he surprises him. I mean, he just completely shoves him back and gets a sack in no time at all. I mean, what can you do if you're a quarterback? Absolutely nothing. When you're getting hit, like the second that you even get the snap, it's not going to work out too well for you. And that's what Smith was able to do with San Francisco, is he was just a big, strong guy who could overpower people, and he looked like a man playing with children sometimes out there. But then the question becomes, this isn't a video talking about how good he was at a certain point. This is the video talking about what will he bring to the Dallas Cowboys. Was this a good signing for Dallas? Does this make sense? And again, it can be debated. So I think one way to maybe get a better idea would be look at his time in Oakland. This is now when he is not playing under a great defensive system. He's playing against a not as good team. The 2015 Raiders weren't atrocious by any means. They went 7-9, but they definitely, weren't that great, and their point differential was pretty bad actually. So not the best team, but let's look at how Smith did there. This is a play where he is going up. Once again, this is against the Bears. It's going to be a one-on-one matchup, although this time against a different left tackle because, several years passed. And it's going to be a one-on-one matchup. And right after the ball is snapped, you notice what Smith is doing here. He runs up. He gets his left arm right there on that tackle's right shoulder pad. But also, he gets his right arm, and he's going to grab the wrist of that tackle. That's perfect hand placement. I mean, that's just what you dream of as a defensive lineman. That's just what you want really badly, because at this point, he can do whatever. For one thing, he can take the left hand off of him, which now means that as an offensive lineman, you're basically trying to push somebody with one hand while they have both hands. And the offensive lineman's right hand, which is on Smith, doesn't have a great position because Smith also has his hand right there. So this is just a perfect situation for Smith, not to mention he has momentum right now. He's running towards the tackle. So this is going to work out at this point, and it does work out. Smith gets through. He doesn't quite get the sack, but he's able to knock the ball down, and he generated pressure. Just a really good play from Smith, and I think that shows that, okay, this guy still had it even as late of 2015. Maybe not as much, maybe he wasn't as good, but part of that might have just been playing for not as good of a team. Really, what I watched when I was watching some of his Oakland Raiders tape that I didn't see so much watching him with the 49ers was that he got a lot smarter over the years, which I don't think anyone else has ever said Smith has gotten a lot smarter over the years, but in terms of on the football field, he did. Off the football field, no, not at all, but his football IQ got a lot higher, and this is a good example where it's going to be actually just a one-on-one matchup against a tight end, which seems pretty terrible, but this is actually going to be a running play, and the way it's designed to work is that basically the halfback can choose either of those two gaps to go to. So in this play, yes, it seems like it's going to be terrible, but basically wherever Smith goes, if Smith goes to the inside or to the outside, well, then the halfback can just run around. So it doesn't matter too much if you lose this matchup as a tight end. One thing you're going to see right off the bat is that Smith does a great job of just pushing his assigned man further back, which is great. I mean, now it's going to be a little bit more difficult for the halfback, and he's going to have to make his decision quicker. Now, you see that there's a linebacker running over to that gap right there. That's actually not the gap that Chicago ideally wants to run this ball to. They will if it's open, but ideally they want to get around to the edge. They have an offensive lineman pulling in that direction. And so that's really where they want to go. But notice how aware Smith is here. He notices this and is able to dive out and make that play. And a lot of guys maybe might not notice that as quickly. And by the time they do notice it and try to make a play, it's too late. They can barely get a hand on the halfback. Smith noticed it instantly, was able to make a play, and he did. He got a lot more aware as the season went on. He got a lot smarter as the season went on, or as his career went on. And that's something that I think maybe is part of the reason why the Cowboys are signing him. They're looking at this and just saying, you know what? I mean, this guy has gotten smarter. He has some decent football IQ. Maybe him at 30, maybe he still has been practicing football when he's not being an idiot. So maybe let's just go out and let's see if he still has it. I do find it kind of interesting. I don't know how much access they really had to him because of the coronavirus, but at the same time, if they like him and they trust him, I mean, I think it's worth a shot. It's the definition of a low-risk, high-reward type move. Losing $4 million is not nearly that bad, but potentially getting a guy who could be great, has been elite in the past, and is only 30, there definitely is that high reward upside. Will it happen? I mean, if I'm a betting man, I say no, but you never know. So, interesting situation. Like to know what you guys think. What do you think of Smith going to the Cowboys? Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.